Welcome to the Fleet Geeks podcast. We're here to help develop fleet and transport professionals. Do you want to progress and develop your skills and knowledge? We promise to bring lively conversation and debate around interesting issues and keep you bang up to date with changes in our awesome industry. The Fleet Geeks are a community of professionals, and if you enjoy the podcast, why not join the discussion for free in the Fleet Geek community over on Facebook? The red light's rolling, and I am joined by Baggers. Mr. John Bagley, my mate Baggers. John is the founder of Compass Transport Solutions. All-round good guy. We've done a lot of work together over the last 12 months. We've known each other probably for a couple of years, I think, as part of the peer-to-peer group. And I guess, John, I feel like you're my project, I suppose. You're like... Yeah. Baggers is my project, right? Listeners are like, what the F is Pete on about this week? But anyway, John, for the benefit of the listeners, who many will know who you are from networking and that sort of stuff, but for the benefit of the listeners, tell them a bit about you, mate.
So, morning, guys. Thank you for the intro, Pete. Project Mbappe, but better. Basically, I founded Compass Transport Solutions last year. Got a little bit tired of working for other people. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do in terms of what the future held. And then the opportunity came along, do some consultancy, do some training, driver CPC training, etc. So, over the last, I'm just coming up to the end of year one now. So over the last 12 months, it's been a very good year. In that sense, and I've done an awful lot as well.
Brilliant, mate, brilliant. And I can't believe it's been a year because it's like flown by, hasn't it? Like I can't believe how quickly that's flown by. So we're going to do a series of 3 podcasts for the listeners, aren't we? So this one we're focusing on, what's happened, what the last years look like, and the things that have happened for you. And then in the second podcast, we're going to do 6 things that you've learned as part of that last year. And then the final podcast is going to be about what you got planned for year 2 and onwards, right? Now, one of the things that I want to sort of establish for the listeners is the reason we're doing this is that many people listening ask me about what it's like to set up on your own and what it's like going consulting and what are the things you need to know and what are the things you need to do and what are the things you need to have. And I just thought it'd be ideal with you as a 12-month anniversary. Yeah. Because it's a few years for me now. So Flagship have just gone 6 years since we founded. 5 years since I've been full-time in it. And it's just like, I don't know, some of it's a bit of a blur for me. So you kind of forget because you're dealing with your day-to-day challenges now. So I guess the value for listeners is going to be, well, what's it like setting up a consultancy and training company? What's involved, what are the surprises, that sort of stuff. So I guess like what's happened, obviously we're going to do the learnings in the next podcast, but what's been going on, John? What's happened in the last year for you? What are the things that have gone on?
So I think rolling it back to the start, and the first thing I did initially, I set the business up, and then I sat there and I thought to myself, right, I've done this. How do I make sure I'm busy? Looking ahead to 2024, driver CPC deadline, and I was one of the first contingents on the Flagship CPC consortium back at the 1st of August. So that's 12 months in now. And off the back of training, getting a bit more confident with everything, I think it just sort of fell into place where training was the baseline for everything. Still had a couple of external transport manager clients as well, but training was the major baseline, really. It gave me a lot of open doors into companies that were previously difficult to open. Sort of almost every company that I've been to do CPC, I've pretty much ended up coming out with a compliance audit off the back of it. Which helps.
Tell me more about, I guess the first question that the listeners are going to want to know is like, do you have any regrets? Has it been worth it?
It's been worth it. Has it been easy? I wouldn't have said it's been easy, but nothing is good's ever easy, is it? Not to be cliche. However, I wouldn't go back and change it now. And I think my biggest regret would have been not doing it when I was thinking about it.
Right. Okay. Okay. Cool. So that's a great insight, isn't it? And knowing that you don't regret it, so year in you don't regret it. Has it caused you any sleepless nights?
Truthfully, there's been the odd occasion where I've been laying in bed thinking, I've not got a lot planned for next week. What's going on? I've got some empty days, and I'm sort of fortunate that I always had a backup plan in that I've got my Class 1 license, so if I needed to, I could have always gone and done a bit of driving. But then it naturally just flowed, and now if I'm laying in bed and I think, oh, I've got a couple of days spare next week, I'm sort of glad.
Okay. Well, that's great. So, I guess the question is then: has it benefited you knowing that you've got a backup plan? If that makes sense, having had that license, you can essentially go and get work at a drop of a hat if you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. That was my safety net, and I couldn't have gone into it without having that safety net, I suppose.
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. So tell me about the first year has been a balance of like external transport management clients, some driver CPC training, and also some compliance audits and that kind of stuff, right? Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Back in January, I then decided that I needed to do my level 3 award in education and training. So I sort of got the back end of last year out of the way, got my feet into it, got really stuck into it, and then sort of sat in January and thought, right, what does this year look like for me? Wrote down a list of things that I wanted to do. The first one being my level 3 award in education and training, so I could look to teach transport manager CPC, refreshers, etc. So I passed that, and then off the back of that, started dipping my toe into doing refresher training and transport manager CPC, and then it pretty much snowballed off that. Really, ended up doing my level 3 first aid at work, so now I can, being able to offer services that aren't just solely transport related. So yeah, there might end up being a change in name now because Compass Transport Solutions just says transport, doesn't it? But yeah.
Cool. So maybe we see a change in name to Compass Solutions or Compass Training Solutions. I don't know. It's one of the challenges. It's one of the challenges I've always had, John, is that we've done consulting and training, and then you kind of got to decide on the identity. Are you a training company that does consultancy, or a consultancy company that does training, for example? Which is obviously a tricky thing, isn't it? So Mags has just bought me envelopes. I'm not sure that I want these envelopes, Mags, but thank you. I'll have to have a check of those in a moment. Cool. So okay, so that just waylaid me a moment. Well, let me gather my thoughts again. So a question I've got for you is: do you think you'd have taken home more? And we don't need to talk numbers, but do you think from an income perspective you've lost out by being consulting for the year? Do you think you've been better or worse off, if that makes sense?
I think I've been better off in that I've had that freedom, and I mean, don't get me wrong. If all I'm doing for the last 12 months is training, that's good because you know what time you start, you know what time you finish, you know what your day consists of. Everything's structured. Whereas being
financially, you think you've been better off, yeah. And from a work and effort perspective, do you think that you've had to work harder than you would have done if you were, say, a full-time transport manager somewhere? Do you think you've had to work as much?
I have and I haven't, if that makes sense. In that I've had the flexibility to choose when I'm doing that work, where I'm doing it from, as opposed to being a full-time employed transport manager.
Yeah, got you. So you don't think you've necessarily worked more hours, for example? You haven't worked like 7 days a week, for example. I know some transport managers might work 7 days a week anyway, right?
No, I've never done the 7 days a week. At max, I've done 6, but then some of them have been half days or sort of relaxed days, sort of thing.
Yeah, awesome. I was really impressed the other day when we were doing because one of the things we do is some coaching together, and when I asked you coaching how many hours a week do you work, I was really surprised at how well you're managing your time. So go on, tell the listeners how many hours a week you work, because I think they're going to be really impressed.
Hello, it's Shani from Flagship Partners. We are really proud to sponsor the Fleet Geeks podcast. If you need expert advice or training for your fleet business, make Flagship Partners your first choice. We are really excited to announce the launch of our Transport Manager Academy. With expert development for fleet leaders, we offer fully accredited initial Transport Manager CPC training, CPC refresher, and operator license awareness training, as well as mentoring, support, and professional development beyond the qualification. Our vision is to develop elite fleet professionals.
I think to put a number on it, it was somewhere around 35 to 40-ish hours a week. And I was thinking about that after our conversation, and I'm like, is that because a lot of the stuff that I do, is that because I don't really class that as work? Mm-hmm. In that sense as well. I could be in the office with a film on in the background, just plugging away at the laptop, but then I don't really class that as work.
Right. Okay.
And I think
so do you class work as like delivered work with a client, if that makes sense? You're not really talking about the working on the business. So you're doing about 35, 40 hours a week with clients, and then you're doing additional time just working on the business.
Thereabouts, because I mean, none of it really feels like work, which is great. Hopefully, in the next 2 years, I'm still saying the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, is there any signs of boredom yet?
No. There's always something there to keep me busy.
It's nice having that variety, isn't it? It's nice having that variety. And do you find your phone rings a bit less? Like, when you're in a transport manager's role or an operational type role, your phone is just constantly like, because you're the problem solver, right? You're the go-to guy. Yeah. So the phone's going all the time. Have you found that?
So in the midst of it, I'd take a call at 6 o'clock in the morning, for instance, and by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that 6 o'clock in the morning call had disappeared from my call list. That's how much it was ringing off the hook. However, now I can go back in my call list, and I'm a few days back in the call list now, which is handy, especially if you don't save numbers straight away.
Well, that makes total sense. Okay, cool. And then, so one of the things that I'm really interested in is you've managed to run a profitable business within 12 months, right? Which is a success story, right? Obviously, you'll probably be finalising your first year accounts with your accountants and stuff like that. So you won't necessarily know what profitability you've made or anything like that, but you've obviously managed to live and survive on the money. Yeah. Now, just out of interest, because it's very timely that I asked this question, because I've seen, I don't know if you saw it, there's one of the Facebook groups, there's a company advertising audits at 495 quid.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday.
Which obviously we'll be very skeptical about, right? And if you're listening to this and you're offered an audit for 495 quid, just don't, right? Just don't do it. So, at Flagship, an audit will normally take, well, it really depends on the fleet, but anything from 1.5, 2 days for a sort of small to medium sized fleet through to 5 or more days potentially on a bigger fleet. And I think one of the things that people don't realize, that obviously you've had the advice early to help support you, is a lot of people come into this not realizing what their day rate needs to be, and they think that cheaper's better, if that makes sense. And they try and compete on price in the way that this advert has gone. O license compliance audits, traffic commissioner approved. Yeah, traffic commissioner approved 495 or something like that, which is just absolutely incredible, really, that someone thinks that they can go and do that. So just to give people an idea, a flavour, do you have like a fixed day rate that you're happy to share? Or, if I was to book you for driver CPC, do you have a fixed fee that's likely to be depending on travel?
It depends what it is. And I scale it back to, we had a couple of conversations that, what does that day rate look like? How do you work that out? Which is something that I want to touch on in the next podcast. But it depends on the work really. If it was sort of driver CPC, there's not, it's 7 hours and the travelling and stuff like driver CPC. I look at £200 a day, and then when you get more into the technical side of things, like transport manager CPC, obviously that's more money again. So I start to look around the £300 a day for transport manager CPC, and then I get a lot of people that say I'm expensive, but without being big-headed, I'm also going to want to do. So you sort of get what you pay for, don't you?
Sure.
In that aspect.
And that's the price that you'll charge other companies, right? But obviously those companies have to charge, those companies have to set a fee to be able to cover all of their sales and marketing, all of the expenses of doing their business, their premises, etc., right? So I think the thing that people find scary is when they go to a company and it's like £1,000 a day, for example. That's not unreasonable. That's not unreasonable because people have got to run a business in the background, haven't they? Exactly. They've got to have administrators. They've got to have people that look after the qualification. There's fees around the actual licensing of the courses and the membership to the from an administrative point of view. So there's insurances to pay for. There's travel. There's there's subsistence. There's so much to do, and obviously the wage of the trainer is only a small part of that. And actually one of the things we lose in transport in this industry is that there's people come into the thing and just they'll price that money based on just them. They don't think about all of the subsidiary stuff that needs to happen to be effective. So for a really good example, right, is cyber security, right? We need to insure ourselves and we need to have decent cyber security. And if you're going to employ a consultant or training company, you need to make sure that data is secure. I bet there's loads of consultants out there who haven't got the right insurances. They haven't got IT companies who are protecting their computer systems from being hacked. There's all sorts of sensitivity.
Exactly, and we touch back on a £500 audit. Actually, there's also taxes out of that, and you might seem busy because you're doing 2 audits a month. You're doing two £500 audits a month. You're getting one every other week, but I'd sooner have £1,000 audit than 2 £500 audits because it's the same money for less work essentially.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's I think that's the challenge is that people. I think people don't understand the cost of doing business. I suppose is one of the real challenges. So you need to make sure you charge accordingly. I think a lot of people would look at it and go, "Oh, right, okay, so I don't know. I want to get 50 grand a year, for example. I want to pay myself 50 grand a year. So that's £1,000 a week, right? And then they go and price it accordingly, right? Yeah. The issue you've got is actually you can only work. One of the things people don't realize is they can only work. I work out if you're consulting and training, and you want to work like normal hours, you can only deliver 176 days of work a year.
Exactly.
Okay. Once you take off holiday, bank holidays, administrative time, etc., genuinely, and not, because you can't deliver 5 days a week. One of the things that you'll find when you're being a trainer or consultant, you can't deliver 5 days a week, maybe only 4. So you can only ever be 80% productive because you can only ever sell 4 days out of 5. So in reality, it ends up being around 176 days, right? That massively changes. And then you've got all of your business expenses. So if you want to pay yourself, for example, 50 grand a year, you're going to need to sell probably 120 grand a year. Right, exactly. Because you've got all of the costs of doing business, you've got all sorts of stuff, right? You got to do all of your insurances, all of your approvals, all of everything else that comes with running a business, as well as the administrative time, etc. And this is just for you alone, right? So once you do the maths on that, and there's 176 days to do, and you're not going to sell every day that you can work, are you? Because that's never going to happen. You're probably only ever going to be 50% productive, right?
Exactly.
So all of a sudden, it doesn't take you long to realise it's £1,000 a day, right? Or potentially up to £1,000 a day.
Exactly, and that's where I think naivety comes in. You see a lot of people that are sort of jumping up and down. Oh, I'm doing audits and I'm doing this, but again, there's your qualification costs as well. You've got to factor in it. It's one.
You got to do your CPD, you got to do your CPD. You got to train. You got to do. There's so much to do, isn't there? There's so much to think about.
Exactly that.
So okay, cool. So we've ended up digressing into rates and stuff like that. But tell me a bit more about, is there anything else? So obviously, what else? Is there anything else you wanted to share as part of this one? Or should we call it a day and we'll go on to the 6 things you've learned in the next one?
Yeah, I think really it's just, again, I think I've said this before, but if anybody's thinking about doing it, just do it. Or if you're not sure, give me a shout. You know, I have a few people. I've built up a sort of a network of people that will ring me now, just for a chat, just for some advice. Experienced transport managers as well, and experienced consultants that will ring me and just for a little bit of advice. So, you know, if anybody's unsure on anything, I'm sure you can find me on LinkedIn, etc. Drop me a message. I'm happy to help anybody and support anybody.
Awesome. John, you've been an absolute star. Thanks for joining me. And I look forward to chatting to you on the next one.
Cheers, pal. Thank you.
Appreciate everyone for listening. And we'll see you on the next one. Make sure you subscribe. See you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please share with your friends and colleagues too. Join us for free on Facebook with the Fleet Geeks community for transport and fleet managers. Fleet Geeks offers ongoing professional development, networking and mentoring too. So get in touch with me, Pete Rushmer, on any social media platform to find out more.